Have you ever felt the sea try to steal your last breath only to find life's greatest purpose on the other side? Welcome to God's Glimpse NDE, where we explore tales that redefine death and reveal divine truths. Today's story comes from Luke Harper, a former Navy engineer turned commercial diver, raised in foster homes and forged by hardship. One stormy night off the Oregon coast, Luke was hurled into 30-foot breakers and lost consciousness in icy waters. What followed was a journey through realms of radiant light, a reunion with an unseen soul family, and a glimpse of his true purposes. If God himself whispered that there is no death, Luke returned to his battered body, later battled stage 4 cancer, and emerged driven by gratitude and faith. Stay tuned to hear how his near-death encounter reshaped everything he believed. I had no idea how far we'd drifted until the roar of the waves told me something had shifted. The wind had driven our little inflatable craft well past the entrance to Mariner's Cove, and before any of us could react, we were hurtling toward a wall of breakers 20 feet high. It felt like a freight train gathering force as it surged beneath our boat's hull. One moment, I was leaning into the spray's cold bite, and the next I was launched into a world of churning water and smothering night. It was pitch black, sky and sea indistinguishable in the tempest, and I recall being flung like a rag doll into a swirling pool of fury, my ears filled with the thunder of crashing surf that drowned out my own gasps. Even as my lungs screamed for air, the sea insisted on swallowing me whole. Every instinct told me to fight for a breath I could not find. Finally, my body surrendered, and I slipped beneath that savage surface. But even then, when the dark water closed over my head and I took that final inhale of brine, a deeper awareness emerged. In the moments when my senses began to fade, I felt a warmth, an inexplicable comfort that seemed to pulse from somewhere beyond my drowning mind. I knew, in that buried instant, that I was not alone. There was something greater than the storm's chaos watching over me. I had heard sailors claim God's hand guided them to safety in impossible storms. I had listened to Old Testament stories, such as Jonah praying from the belly of the whale and feeling a presence stronger than any ocean's rage. In the midst of being swallowed by a cold, merciless sea, a light within my soul whispered that I might yet see another dawn. My name is Luke Harper. I spent my earliest years wandering the windswept plains of eastern Colorado, under a sky too vast for a small boy to comprehend. My mother was raising me on her own long before single parenthood became quietly accepted. To neighbors, it carried a hush and an unspoken question. Determined to give me what she called a better life, she arranged for me to live with one family after another, paying a handful of dollars each week to feed me, clothe me, and see that I got to school. At the time, I believed she was doing what any loving mother would do. What followed felt nothing like love. In each of those homes, I was simply the extra help, a fee-for-service child who learned almost immediately that affection could be measured in dollar bills and a bed in a stranger's spare room. There were no warm greetings when I arrived, no goodnight kisses or Sunday breakfasts to remind me I belonged somewhere. Instead, I sensed almost instinctively that I was always a temporary guest. I watched other children pair off with friends, heard their laughter ricochet down the hallway, and felt an ache in my chest that no amount of kindness could soothe. Even at 5, I understood the invisible boundary between welcome and tolerated, and I learned to keep my head down and become almost a shadow in each household. Those first 7 years felt like a bitter winter, cold, not from the weather, but from the chill of rejection. There was no dinner table chatter to include me, no bedtime story to coax me to sleep. I finished my meager portion as quickly as possible and retreated to a corner of the living room, where the television's flickering light became my only companion. Like Samuel in the Old Testament, I cried out into the night, begging someone, anyone, to see me, and to claim me as their own. Each morning, I dressed in pale hope that today might be different, only to discover I was still just another mouth to feed and another body to occupy a dusty cot. Between ages 7 and 14, I finally found a semblance of stability with a family that, on the surface, appeared warmer and more centered. They greeted me with genuine smiles, and for a moment, I believed I had landed among people who truly cared. I would race down their long dirt driveway to join other kids in tossing a ball, the late afternoon sunlight dancing on their laughing faces. For the first time, I tasted the strange sweetness of belonging. A brother who clapped me on the back and invited me into his games. A sister who shared half her sandwich without being asked. Yet this fragile sense of home was dashed when my mother decided she was ready to pick up her role as mom. At 14, I was yanked from that rare sanctuary and returned to a household where my mother and the man who called himself my stepfather argued like thunderclaps. Their fights were loud collisions of pride and disappointment that echoed through every room. I learned to tiptoe past the kitchen after dinner, hoping to go unseen, because their shouts felt like spears aimed at my heart. I realized I did not belong there either. In that daily cacophony, I discovered the only way to protect my sanity was to slip away. I explored the dense cottonwood woods behind our modest ranch home. Beneath the rustling leaves and the reassuring murmur of a nearby creek, I felt a fleeting sense of safety. I spent hours perched on moss-covered rocks, pretending I was Huck Finn drifting on the Mississippi or the prodigal son returning home. Every book became a lifeline, promising a world where belonging was possible and acceptance could be earned by the courage to keep believing. From those fractured beginnings, I learned a lesson I have carried into adulthood. True isolation is less about being alone and more about feeling invisible in a crowd. Even now, as I stand shoulder to shoulder with strangers in airports or ride crowded buses downtown, I sometimes feel that old ache, that sense that no one truly sees me. Yet, when the ocean's fury ripped me from our small boat and tossed me into black, roaring water, I detected something far more powerful than loneliness. A presence so vast and unconditionally loving that I understood in that terrifying moment I was never, ever, truly alone. When I turned 15, I still carried the ache of fractured family ties. I realized college tuition was beyond my grasp, and rather than surrender to that fear, I saw a path forward in the United States Navy. Enlisting meant trading freedom for discipline, but it also meant access to the GI Bill's promise of tuition coverage if I ever chose to pursue an engineering degree. I donned the uniform with single-minded determination. If I could earn enough money, I thought, I could rewrite my own story. In my mind, it was simple. Join the service, become a technical expert, then use that skill to secure a college degree and build a reliable future. Basic training on the Oregon coast was a crucible. I recall pounding surf and relentless drills echoing through gray barracks walls. Each morning began before sunrise, choking on salty air and the bitter taste of sweat. When I was finally accepted into the Naval Engineering program, I specialized as a mechanical engineer, learning to maintain steam turbines, purge diesel tanks, and troubleshoot intricate hydraulic systems. Just as King David once declared in Psalm 18, "He trains my hands for war, so that my arms can bend a bow of bronze," I believed my Navy years would shape my hands and mind for bigger triumphs. I became adept at wrenching open engine panels in freezing temperatures or shutting down pumps under red alert. Every qualified inspection and glowing performance review fueled my conviction. I would cut a swath through life, bulldozing any obstacle that threatened to derail my ambitions. Aboard gray-hulled destroyers, slicing through Pacific swells, I drank deeply from the cup of self-reliance. Instructors praised my focus and precision, yet beneath those accolades, I nurtured a harsher creed. I evaluated every relationship through a cost-benefit lens. If a shipmate's opinion clashed with my plan, I kept my head down or clipped their wings with curt retorts. My emotional armor grew thick. I saw compassion as a luxury I could not afford. In retrospect, I recognized the dangerous pride in that mindset. Moses himself bore the burden of a people's cries, and I refused to acknowledge anything beyond my own code of efficiency. When I was 27 and released from active duty as a first-class petty officer, the Navy had honed my engineering skills but left me yearning for something more visceral. I had fallen in love with the sea as a teenager, strap-on fins and mask, and I felt the water cradle me like a mother's embrace. After my discharge, I pursued a commercial diver's license. My first descent off the Oregon shoreline revealed an entirely new realm. Beneath the chop, eerie kelp forests undulated in green-blue currents, and octopus tentacles reached toward me like silent sentinels. Jacques Cousteau's pioneering spirit flooded my mind, reminding me human destiny isn't sealed to land alone. Underwater worlds with their own rules and fragility beckoned me further. Within 2 years, I rose to chief engineer aboard the research vessel Starlight Guardian, a 180-foot oceanographic ship devoted to mapping seafloor topography and rescuing stranded submersibles. I was responsible for every engine, pump, and weld in that ship's infrastructure. There were no rule books for many tasks. Improvising underwater welding to seal a hull breach more than 150 feet down, or recalibrating sonar arrays while waves pounded the deck in 20-foot swells. Each morning I descended into the cavernous engine room, where steel bulkheads reverberated with diesel thrums and the scent of lubricating oil hung like incense. Every time a senior scientist asked me to rig a custom mounting bracket or splice a hydraulic hose at midnight, my soul soared with purpose. This was more than a job, it was a calling. Yet the inherent danger of 1980s commercial diving was no secret. Actuarial tables labeled our survival odds unpredictable, so we carried no personal life insurance. Even Nick Aylesworth, a seasoned colleague, had suffered a near-fatal decompression accident only months earlier. His warning etched itself in my mind like a weathered Bible verse. Our daily prayers were simple. Lord, grant me steady hands and clear vision, we would say, knowing tunnel vision at 200 feet below the surface could mean fatal nitrogen narcosis. When I surfaced on a routine inspection of the rogue trench, deckhands slapped my shoulders and cheered. You came back to us again. I would nod, blinking salt water from my eyes, then stare at the Pacific horizon and wonder whether childhood isolation had been leading me to this messy beauty. Beneath awe and adrenaline, a more insidious impulse simmered. Like King Saul chasing David, I chased the next adrenaline fix, one that would prove I was unbreakable. I refused to admit fear. At every depth, I vowed to bulldoze forward, as if my narrow focus alone could nullify the ocean's fury. In those days, I carried New York's stubbornness in my heart, but Oregon mist in my lungs. Each dive rebirthed me, and each resurfacing reminded me of the solitary child in a stranger's house. No matter how many systems I mastered, I still feared being cast adrift at any moment. Yet deep down, I reveled in the challenge. Every hydraulic lock I repaired beneath crashing waves, every engine I kept alive in that diesel furnace, felt like a testament to my survival against family, against doubt, against whispers that I might never belong. Then, one storm-scarred autumn night, as the Guardian's hull pitched under a sky torn by lightning, I boarded a small Zodiac to retrieve lost scientific equipment. Beneath a low, starless sky, The ocean delivered me to a place no engineering skill or self-reliance could chart, a realm where the deepest currents converged beyond my fathoming. That night, the breakers claimed me as surely as the wave that had launched me skyward, and for the first time in my life, I faced a force greater than any human contrivance. It taught me the most critical lesson. There is power in surrender and a calling in vulnerability. Commercial diving in the 1980s was a gamble with fate. Insurance companies flatly refused to underwrite us because survival odds were grim. Many comrades suffered catastrophic injuries. Some became embolized from a single miscalculated ascent. Others lost hearing to crushing pressure, and a few never resurfaced at all. We accepted that risk as part of the trade, reminding ourselves each dive was a test of courage and faith. In late 1983, aboard the RV Pacific Pioneer off the Oregon coast, we prepared to evaluate a brand new ROVA remote-operated vehicle designed to survey undersea ridges. That morning's sea was deceptively calm, sunbeams dancing on the swell as we launched the submersible. By midday, the sky darkened with ominous clouds far on the western horizon. An approaching storm promised to transform mellow waves into a violent behemoth. My crewmates and I radioed the bridge urgently. Looks like we're in for a blow. We should head for the inlet before it closes. The inlet's mouth was notorious for furious breakers, where many small craft met their fate. We had beaten lesser gales before, skirting triumph and disaster. But this time, the storm arrived faster than anticipated. Wind whipped into a frenzy, ripping foam from 15-foot rollers. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Rain lashed the deck, and the bridge's yellow lights flickered under assault. Someone murmured Proverbs 27:12. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. We all felt that warning's weight. Reluctantly, the captain and chief design engineer gave the order. Launch the RIB, a rigid, inflatable boat built for heavy seas. They believed its neoprene tubes and twin outboard engines could punch through 40-foot rollers. Ordinarily, as chief engineer, I would stay aboard to maintain the main engines, but that night, the captain insisted I join the RIB crew because I knew the inlet's currents better than anyone. I felt a knot in my stomach. My job was to maintain the Pioneer's heart, not ride a tiny boat into a maelstrom. Yet, I nodded. We donned bulky neoprene exposure suits with thick seals at the neck and wrists, reinforced against hypothermia. Strapped to our backs were life vests with integrated flotation bladder spumpkin orange beacons in the dark. By the time we plunged into the Pioneer's wake, wind had surged to gale force. Spray stung my face, and salt water froze against my goggles. Our hands trembled as we balanced the RIB's bow angle to cut through rollers rather than ride straight up and fall into the trough. We hammered against walls of water, following a handheld radar's faint blip marking the inlet entrance. Each broken wave threatened to pull us under. Each gust of wind felt like a slap from an invisible fist. I gripped the throttle and eased back, fighting to keep the bow from burrowing under. My heartbeat thumped in my throat as I remembered Samson trusting his own strength until it was shorn. I refused to rely on my skill alone in this brutal sea. Suddenly, a colossal breaker estimated at 25 to 30 feet lifted us onto its crest like a toy and hurled us forward. We flew across the trough, the RIB's tube slicing through seawater until we plunged into the chasm behind the wave. My stomach lurched as we went 90 degrees from vertical. The next moment, the boat shuddered like it had been crushed under a titan's heel. The impact felt like slamming into concrete. The RIB's starboard tube crumpled inward, folding like a battered almond shell. In that instant, I was no longer tethered to the Pioneer's deck. I was strapped only to faith itself. "Hold on," someone shouted, but I was already airborne. The ribs' rubber cradle bucked beneath me, and then the sea yanked me under. A sheet of black water swallowed me whole. Turbulent currents tossed me like a rag doll, pushing me toward a rocky reef below. My lungs screamed for air, but none came. I tried to find the surface, the sliver of sky, but the abyss offered darkness and relentless pounding. Time stretched into eternity. Oxygen deprivation seeped into my limbs, coaxing a strange euphoria that blurred my thoughts and crept toward my vision's edges. Yet even as panic threatened to overwhelm me, a pervasive calm washed over my mind. It felt like an unseen hand cradling my chest, guiding me through the maelstrom. In that instant, I spotted a single pinprick of light far above, shimmering through roiling water. It beckoned me upward, promising sanctuary beyond the chaos. Though battered and betrayed by my senses, I was certain this light was my path home. The storm did not relent, and the dark sea tried to drag me deeper. But the memory of every sacred verse I'd studied, like Psalm 23's promise, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, echoed inside me. With every ounce of will, I propelled myself toward that pinprick of brilliance, trusting in something greater than any breaker on earth. Below the waves, my fate hung in the balance. Above the storm, an unspoken promise shimmered. No matter how violent the sea, no matter how fiercely the winds rode the crest, something far larger than this world stood ready to calm the tempest and hold me close. In that crucible of salt and wind, I realized survival is never purely skill. It is surrender to a power that outmatches every breaker. When the storm had finally done its worst, the RIB lay shredded against a basalt reef, and my body floated near the surface, limp from exhaustion. Yet, even as cold threatened to steal my consciousness, I clung to one simple truth. I was no longer alone. Whether I would return to that wreckage or slip forever into the depths, I sensed my story was not yet finished. In that suspended moment between life and death, I and anyone watching from worlds beyond knew something greater had already taken hold. Captain Carter insisted I join the small boat mission, even though as chief engineer, I normally never left the main vessel. That chilly November night in Port Emerald Bay, our team was testing a new unmanned submersible, so the deck crew was shuffled to accommodate 4 of us. None knew the harbor's hideaways as well as I did. My title as third mate meant I had spent countless hours navigating these narrow channels. They trusted me to bring the Zodiac safely alongside the research vessel. We descended into the lower deck, where the bosun's locker lay buried in shadows. Inside, life vests weathered and grimy hung from rusted hooks, encrusted with years of salt spray and barnacles. We pounded them with wooden mallets until flakes of mildew and grit fell away, exposing once bright orange neoprene. As we strapped those oversized inflatable bladders to our torsos, I felt their weight, each one like a floating pillow tied to my chest, a promise of buoyancy in turbulent seas. Once we released the Zodiac into gray-green surf, the ocean seemed calm, its surface smooth enough to glimpse starlit shorelights marking Port Emerald's labyrinthine docks. Our handheld radar painted a faint blip where the harbor's lighthouse had guided mariners for over a century. But beyond that beam of security, a fresh storm began to curl above us, gathering momentum and growing dark as an eclipse at sea. We forced the small boat forward, its twin outboards roaring against wind. Each crest lifted us high, and we took bearings on the harbor buoy. We rode the surge before crashing into the next trough. It felt like being caught on an infinite roller coaster, hammering up to a narrow peak, then plunging down into briny darkness, gasping for breath. My knuckles whitened on the throttle handle as I recited Psalm 107-29. He stilled the storm to a whisper. The waves of the sea were hushed, like a lifeline. Minutes passed in that rhythmic dance between wave and small craft. I spotted the buoy for the last time on a crest before the storm's fury claimed us entirely. A vast wall of water, towering 20 feet high, barreled toward our vulnerable frame. We were too close to the surf break sailors call the mouth of the whale. The first breaker swallowed the bow. The Zodiac lifted like a cork, only to be flung skyward by the next monstrous swell. In that instant, time slowed. The rubber sides buckled under pressure, folding inward like a crushed sandwich. The impact felt precise and brutal, snapping my spine backward as I held on with every ounce of muscle. The Zodiac's keel raked the hull, and the deck parted. One moment, I was strapped into the rubber cradle. The next, I was airborne, flung into a black void. The next wave descended upon me like a titan's fist. I hit the water at such velocity that cold bit into my skin like a brand. Darkness swallowed every color except the storm's furious roar. I wriggled beneath the surface, arms and legs flailing, tumbling like a tattered sail in a gale. The roar of surf was deafening, a relentless drumbeat drowning out my heartbeat. I tried to follow my own ripples upward, but currents yanked me deeper, like Leviathan pulling its prey into an abyss. In the churning blackness, my lungs screamed for oxygen. I felt that fleeting euphoria of forced submersion, an otherworldly thrill that threatened to lull me into surrender. Oxygen deprivation washed over my mind like a sedative, dulling every sense until even the thunderous roar of breakers seemed distant. Yet amid that swirling chaos, an unexpected stillness settled over my mind, an intimate calm in the storm's eye. Though waves battered my body, a quiet knowing whispered in my chest. I was not alone. A glimmer of light beckoned from far above, a solitary spark in infinite dark. It reminded me of John 8:12. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness. That verse echoed through my soul. Driven by blind resolve, I clawed toward that pinprick of brilliance. Each kick felt like resisting a titanic constriction, yet the light pulsed with warmth and promise. With every stroke, the ocean's weight lifted from my shoulders, even if only in my mind. As the storm raged overhead, I sensed unseen hands guiding me upward. Waves threatened to swallow me, yet that light drew nearer. It expanded into a constellation of shimmering shards, each alive with purposeful energy. It felt like slipping between two realms, the brutal roaring sea and a radiant sanctuary beyond sorrow. I clung to that luminous tether, trusting it to carry me through the breaker zone's final onslaught. Below, the shattered Zodiac lay half buried against jagged rocks. My body, numbed by cold and exhaustion, floated just beneath the surface, unresponsive to conscious will. Yet unseen currents, guides of grace, pulled me toward a place where the sea's fury could no longer reach. Even as salt water blurred my vision and chilled my bones, I held on to hope, the assurance that I was being carried by something greater than wind or wave. In those final moments before I broke through the surface, I knew survival was not only skill, but surrender, an act of faith in a power beyond my own. Whether my next breath came in life or beyond, I sensed my journey was far from over, and somewhere, beyond the roar of breakers, a quiet presence awaited. I had never felt so utterly powerless. The sea was a living monster that night, each towering wave smashing against me with bone-jarring force. I could no longer tell up from down. The world had become a swirling vortex of salt water and darkness. My training as a commercial diver taught me how to manage panic when a dive went wrong, but nothing prepared me for this merciless tempest. I understood I could hold my breath only so long. Oxygen deprivation washed over my mind like a sedative, dulling every sense until even the roar of breakers seemed distant. Euphoria crept in, a strange calm that threatened to lull me into surrender. My lungs burned for air, yet some hidden instinct whispered that I could still breathe if I pushed past agony. I forced my mouth open, expecting the electric sting of salt water to flood my throat, but instead, I felt the Pacific's cold embrace pressing me down until my vision blurred to black. Then, as though the ocean itself granted reprieve, the violent world around me went silent. The crashing of waves stilled, replaced by a tangible hush, as if every water drop held its breath. In that sudden quiet, I felt neither currents chill nor winds sting. Instead, I was cocooned in warmth so tender it felt as though a loving hand had slipped beneath my ribs and cradled my heart. In that stillness, a realization echoed from deep within me. Even in the valley of death's shadow, there is no fear when something greater is near. As I drifted in that boundless void, a single pinprick of light appeared above me, flickering like a distant star in a cloudless sky. It beckoned with gentle insistence, drawing my awareness upward, even as my body lay weightless in nothingness. The bright point grew and expanded until it revealed itself not as solitary, but as hundreds of thousands of dancing sparks, fragments of pure, living radiance, moving in perfect harmony. In my mind's eye, I thought of starlings and murmuration, yet this chorus of lights was infinitely grander, each spark pulsing with its own tiny heartbeat of warmth. As I surrendered to that luminous passage, I felt each fragment reach out with a vibration that whispered, "We are with you. We have always been here." It was as if all creation conspired to show me no thread in life's tapestry is ever severed. Each spark shimmered with companionship, brightening the darkness within me until I sensed I was no longer a lone man lost at sea, but part of an unbroken web of light. In that embrace, I understood 1 John 4:16. God is love, and whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them, not as a distant verse, but as living truth. There was no judgment, no hesitation, only complete acceptance. All my regrets and every shard of bitterness, anger, had missed opportunities, jealousy of others, pain from a childhood that never felt like home fell away, like dead leaves in autumn. In their place blossomed a love so unconditional it felt as though every fragment whispered, "You are enough. You have always been enough." I sensed the presence of every being I had ever known, family, friends, even strangers I had once helped, and felt their collective praise like a gentle chorus breathing life back into me. Even as that all-encompassing warmth washed over me, I heard a still, small voice, not in words, but pure knowing. It conveyed that no person, no mistake, no failure could ever separate me from this divine embrace. In that moment, I glimpsed John 10:10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I realized life's purpose is not to fear the abyss, but to live boldly in the light of that love. Yet, as much as my soul ached to remain bathed in brilliance, I felt a gentle tug, an invitation rather than a command to return. I was not yet finished with lessons awaiting me on earth. Love was not a passive state, but a call to action, a responsibility to carry that light back into a world of shadows. In that divine stillness, I understood every step, every grueling dive, every lonely night had prepared me to share this gift. At that final instant, just as the tapestry of radiant sparks began to fade, I felt myself drawn back into my battered body, carried on the same unseen hands that had held me aloft. I emerged from oblivion's depth to the urgent beeping of monitors and gentle tears in my teammates' eyes. Even as I gasped for air, I carried within me that unshakable hope, the persistent spark of love that lit the way forward. My ascension has not been effortless. There were days when I stumbled under the weight of old fears, when loneliness threatened to drag me back into that hole of despair. Yet each time I faltered, I felt that same unwavering love guiding me back, stronger than any doubt. I have encountered visions of archangels' gentle guides who spoke in melodies, unbound by words and moments of stillness in which the divine presence was as close as my own breath. My near-death experience was not merely a brush with heaven. It was a summons to remember who I truly am and why I was sent here. I came back to share that love, to remind every soul that the kingdom of light is already within us, even when the night seems endless. If these words stir something in you, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Let us walk this path of awakening together. We dwell in the greatest love story ever written, yet so many have forgotten their part in it. Take my hand and let us remember who we are, why we came here, and how deeply we are loved. May this truth guide your steps and ignite your own journey of rediscovery. As I look back on that journey from the ICU bed to the very edge of eternity, I see a simple, unshakable truth emerge. Every life is a miracle forged in light and shadow. Every moment of doubt, every act of kindness, every tear and every laugh writes the story of who we really are. I have learned that pain can become a portal to compassion, that fear can be transformed into courage, and that love is the only force capable of shattering the prison of our own making. Today I carry that revelation into each sunrise, aware that every heartbeat is a chance to choose light over darkness. Each morning I whisper a prayer of gratitude for the gift of this life and for the unseen presence that never abandoned me. I invite you now to pause and ask yourself what you believe about love, about purpose, about what awaits beyond the end of breath. If you have felt the stirrings of something greater, if your heart has ever trembled at the thought of the unknown, share your experience below. Let us build a circle of trust where every voice matters and every story can shine a beacon of hope. To those who have walked through the valley of the shadow of death and returned to tell the tale, know that you are not alone. Your testimony is a bridge spanning worlds and a lifeline to souls still searching. May these words remind you that miracles are real, that home is not a distant dream, but a presence you carry within. May the power of these testimonies awaken in you the courage to embrace your own story and to live each day in the wonder of infinite love. Endures all things. I was struck by their patience. Even when my soul tumbled like a child kicking against mercy's current, their devotion never faltered. In that crucible of light, I realized I had spent too many years believing I was my own island, when in truth, I was but a thread in an infinite tapestry of interconnected souls. My every action had created ripples I never saw, reaching to places I never imagined. Yet these beings shone love back at me, as though saying, "You are not defined by your mistakes, only by your willingness to learn." Witnessing this total panorama of my life, I felt a quake of revelation. All my defenses, my pride, my bitterness, every emotional button I thought I guarded like gold melted into a single awareness that I was fundamentally bound to every living being. It was as though I finally understood Romans 12:5. We, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. In that cosmic embrace, I was freed from shame, anger, and fear that had gnawed at me each time I stumbled in narrow ambition. In their place bloomed a humility so deep that every corner of my soul exhaled relief. In that moment of radical vulnerability, they did not shrink away. Instead, they offered me the same love I had witnessed in Christ's parable of the prodigal son, an unconditional welcome home without a single word of reproach. I tasted the joy of the Father in Luke 15:20, running toward his wayward child, arms outstretched, tears of gladness streaming down. As I dissolved into tears, they gently wrapped me one final time in their light, anointing me with the profound sense that I had seen my true self clearly and been loved anyway. All around, fragments shone brighter, as if celebrating not just my life, but the promise I could carry this new understanding back into a world of shadows. I remember feeling the weight of that moment pressing down on me as if reality itself had narrowed to one impossible choice. They spoke of two pills, the red and the blue. And in that instant, I knew exactly which one I needed. I reached for the red pill, the one that promised transformation yet demanded the death of my old self. I felt a surge of terror because I understood immediately that even though my heart still beat in this hospital bed, a version of me would have to die right then and there. The man who had clung to shame, fear, and self-doubt would perish so that someone entirely new could emerge. I whispered yes, even though I did not fully grasp the magnitude of my promise. Looking back, I am grateful my ignorance spared me from turning away. I doubt I would have swallowed that pill if I had known the years of inner work ahead, the decades it would take to unravel every thread of social conditioning, every wound buried in my psyche. I had no idea that true self-love meant lovingly excavating my trauma, tending to it like a sacred flame, nourishing the very essence of my soul. In the weeks that followed, I learned the hard way that self-love is not an indulgence but the highest frequency available to us. Just as the Apostle Paul's encounter on the road to Damascus shattered Saul's old life, Acts 9, my near-death confrontation shattered Jerome's old life and ushered in a new reality. In those early days, I could scarcely stand my own reflection, yet I felt a fierce determination burning within me. Over time, my intuitive gifts unfurled like dormant wings. I became a medical intuitive, able to perceive the pulse of souls behind physical forms. My hands would hover over a person's heart, and I could sense whether their life force flowed freely or if dark cords of unresolved grief constricted their spirit. I saw in vivid detail how the neglect of our inner world manifests as illness in the body. It was as if God had granted me a living parable to teach others that to love ourselves wholly is to unlock heaven on earth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6 echoed in my heart as I realized that self-love is the path to genuine healing. That red pill moment marked the end of one story and the beginning of another, a journey that would teach me nothing less than how to let life be good to me and to help others do the same. That harrowing journey revealed to me how completely my soul's energy had been cut off from my own body. In that life review, I realized the root cause of my suffering was simple, yet profound. I had not been living as my true self. From childhood onward, I had carried layers of shame about my appearance, my desires, my intuitive gifts, and I had buried those parts of myself beneath fear and self-doubt. Instead of embracing the inherent love and worthiness that flow from the soul, I believed I was unworthy of happiness or acceptance. Every time I silenced my feelings, hid my truths, or shrank myself to avoid rejection, I drained another ounce of my vitality. Because I was terrified of failure and desperate for approval, I chased success, recognition, and money rather than the dreams that set my spirit on fire. I traded the nourishment my soul craved singing on stage, sharing what I felt, living fully for shallow victories that left me empty. I suppressed my intuitive insights, even though I could sense unspoken emotions in others as easily as if I had X-ray vision. I denied my own vulnerability, convinced that exposing my heart would invite scorn. Each act of self-silencing, every withheld "I love you," every unpursued passion became another brick in the wall between my soul and my body. Over the years, I learned that the soul is meant to grow through our lived experiences, that it thrives on purpose and passion. When we deny ourselves authenticity and confession, we starve that essential spark. My awakening came when I saw how far I had strayed from the path that would truly feed my inner life. I vowed in that hospital bed that, should I be given another chance, I would honor my soul's needs. I would speak my truth, pursue the dreams that stirred my heart, and nourish my spirit with acts of courage and love. Only then could I expect my body to follow suit, reigniting the energy I had so long denied myself. I realized that without genuine self-appreciation, we starve our souls, watching our inner light dim day by day. As the medium, I began to connect with spirits on the other side, and they whispered regret after regret, tales of lives lived in fear, of love withheld, of creativity never unleashed. One elderly gentleman told me he always yearned to paint but never dared, while a young mother wept for being too busy to read bedtime stories to her children. Their stories were echoes of my own silence, and I saw how their souls had withered when they neglected their true selves. So I kept my lips sealed and let my family's faith guide me. Finally, the flashlight's beam found me. I watched from above, still estranged from my broken body, while they reached for me. It must have been a terrible sight. My right arm wrapped in tangled wreckage, my dislocated shoulder and thumb twisted grotesquely. As they pulled me toward the bow, I felt no painingly dull shock as I hovered above bruised flesh. In that moment, I was acutely aware how miraculous it was I still existed, even as every part of me had been battered by the sea. I remember feeling the weight of that moment pressing down on me as if reality itself had narrowed to one impossible choice. They spoke of two pills, the red and the blue. And in that instant, I knew exactly which one I needed. I reached for the red pill, the one that promised transformation yet demanded the death of my old self. I felt a surge of terror because I understood immediately that even though my heart still beat in this hospital bed, a version of me would have to die right then and there. The man who had clung to shame, fear, and self-doubt would perish so that someone entirely new could emerge. I whispered yes, even though I did not fully grasp the magnitude of my promise. Looking back, I am grateful my ignorance spared me from turning away. I doubt I would have swallowed that pill if I had known the years of inner work ahead, the decades it would take to unravel every thread of social conditioning, every wound buried in my psyche. I had no idea that true self-love meant lovingly excavating my trauma, tending to it like a sacred flame, nourishing the very essence of my soul. In the weeks that followed, I learned the hard way that self-love is not an indulgence but the highest frequency available to us. Just as the Apostle Paul's encounter on the road to Damascus shattered Saul's old life, Acts 9, my near-death confrontation shattered Jerome's old life and ushered in a new reality. In those early days, I could scarcely stand my own reflection, yet I felt a fierce determination burning within me. Over time, my intuitive gifts unfurled like dormant wings. I became a medical intuitive, able to perceive the pulse of souls behind physical forms. My hands would hover over a person's heart, and I could sense whether their life force flowed freely or if dark cords of unresolved grief constricted their spirit. I saw in vivid detail how the neglect of our inner world manifests as illness in the body. It was as if God had granted me a living parable to teach others that to love ourselves wholly is to unlock heaven on earth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. John 14:6 echoed in my heart as I realized that self-love is the path to genuine healing. That red pill moment marked the end of one story and the beginning of another, a journey that would teach me nothing less than how to let life be good to me and to help others do the same. That harrowing journey revealed to me how completely my soul's energy had been cut off from my own body. In that life review, I realized the root cause of my suffering was simple, yet profound. I had not been living as my true self. From childhood onward, I had carried layers of shame about my appearance, my desires, my intuitive gifts, and I had buried those parts of myself beneath fear and self-doubt. Instead of embracing the inherent love and worthiness that flow from the soul, I believed I was unworthy of happiness or acceptance. Every time I silenced my feelings, hid my truths, or shrank myself to avoid rejection, I drained another ounce of my vitality. Because I was terrified of failure and desperate for approval, I chased success, recognition, and money rather than the dreams that set my spirit on fire. I traded the nourishment my soul craved singing on stage, sharing what I felt, living fully for shallow victories that left me empty. I suppressed my intuitive insights, even though I could sense unspoken emotions in others as easily as if I had X-ray vision. I denied my own vulnerability, convinced that exposing my heart would invite scorn. Each act of self-silencing, every withheld "I love you," every unpursued passion became another brick in the wall between my soul and my body. Over the years, I learned that the soul is meant to grow through our lived experiences, that it thrives on purpose and passion. When we deny ourselves authenticity and confession, we starve that essential spark. My awakening came when I saw how far I had strayed from the path that would truly feed my inner life. I vowed in that hospital bed that, should I be given another chance, I would honor my soul's needs. I would speak my truth, pursue the dreams that stirred my heart, and nourish my spirit with acts of courage and love. Only then could I expect my body to follow suit, reigniting the energy I had so long denied myself. I realized that without genuine self-appreciation, we starve our souls, watching our inner light dim day by day. As the medium, I began to connect with spirits on the other side, and they whispered regret after regret, tales of lives lived in fear, of love withheld, of creativity never unleashed. One elderly gentleman told me he always yearned to paint but never dared, while a young mother wept for being too busy to read bedtime stories to her children. Their stories were echoes of my own silence, and I saw how their souls had withered when they neglected their true selves. So I kept my lips sealed and let my family's faith guide me. Finally, the flashlight's beam found me. I watched from above, still estranged from my broken body, while they reached for me. It must have been a terrible sight. My right arm wrapped in tangled wreckage, my dislocated shoulder and thumb twisted grotesquely. As they pulled me toward the bow, I felt no painingly dull shock as I hovered above bruised flesh. In that moment, I was acutely aware how miraculous it was I still existed, even as every part of me had been battered by the sea. Through my medical intuitive practice, I watched clients' energy fields reveal precisely where their life force had ebbed away. Shoulders hunched with unspoken grief, chests hollow with regret, eyes clouded by shame. I saw that every choice to suppress a dream, to hide a truth, to deny a gift drained the soul's vitality and invited chronic illness in its stead. Decades of research confirmed this link, Dr. Kelly Turner's work on radical remission documents countless cancer survivors who credit self-love and wholehearted living with their recoveries. It took me years to truly grasp what my life review had shown me. My own ailments were not random misfortune, but the physical consequence of a soul starved for expression. I had believed affirmations alone or occasional indulgences would suffice, but real nourishment means daily acts of authenticity. Like a muscle, the soul needs regular exercise of speaking my truth aloud, dancing even when no one is watching, gifting my intuition to those in pain. Each sunrise became an invitation to feed my essence, a morning scribble in my soul, journal, a midday check-in with gratitude, an evening of soulful song. Slowly, I wove these practices into a tapestry of self-love so rich that my energy field began to glow again. I discovered that true healing is not power over the body, but partnership with the Sulan, that every deliberate act of self-honoring builds a fortress of well-being around us. In that place of aligned intention and daily devotion, illness flees and life blooms anew. In the weeks and months that followed, I felt a gradual but undeniable shift take root within me. My body began to recover not merely from illness, but from the long drought of self-neglect, and my days unfolded into something richer than I could once have dreamed possible. With each morning sunrise, I sensed a deepening vitality coursing through my veins as if my very cells were singing in resonance with the song of my soul. I came to understand that self-love is not a luxury, but the essential elixir that raises our energy, lifts our vibration, and aligns us with the highest frequencies of existence. As the Apostle Paul reminds us, our bodies are temples of the Spirit, 1 Corinthians 6:19, and when we honor them with kindness and compassion, miracles of restoration take place. Almost imperceptibly at first, blessings began to cascade into my life. Opportunities that once felt out of reach, an invitation to speak at a healing conference, a chance to mentor someone grappling with chronic disease arrived unbidden. I watched how, when I dared to sing truthfully from my heart, doors would swing wide. In the same way that Oprah Winfrey transformed her own traumas into a beacon of hope for millions, I found that authenticity has the power to magnetize abundance and cultivate unexpected joy. As I navigated the world with this newfound courage, the courage to claim my intuitive gifts openly, to embrace my sexuality without shame, to speak my mind even when it felt vulnerable, life rewarded me at every turn. Simple errands became adventures. A cup of coffee tasted sweeter when savored in gratitude. A quiet walk through the park felt like communion with God's creation. People I crossed paths with seemed to lean in, drawn to the gentle flame of my renewed purpose. I no longer moved through life in scarcity or fear. I moved in confident expectation that life itself was conspiring in my favor. I now trust, without reservation, that existence longs for my well-being. The universe asks only that I let it flow through me, and the way I do that is by loving myself fiercely and unconditionally. I give thanks every day for those near-death wrappings of pain, because they unraveled the falsehoods I had clung to and set me free. Disease ceased to be my enemy and became my master teacher, showing me exactly where my heart had frozen and inviting me to thaw it with compassion. If you have ever believed that illness is a punishment, consider instead that it may be a sacred messenger. When we shift our perspective and see suffering as a call to deep self-care, we open the door to profound healing. As Jesus said in John 10:10, "I have come that you may have life and have it abundantly." May my journey remind you that abundance begins the moment you choose to feed your soul with love, day after day, moment by moment. And purpose. I worried I'd lose credibility among friends if I spoke of a soul family or life review, knowing such words could sound like reckless ravings. So I chose to swim in silence, hoping everyday currents would carry me to a place where I could share my tale without fear. I have learned to speak my truth without apology. I honor my own limits and stand firm in my convictions, even when it risks losing the approval I once craved. I no longer chase wealth or accolades, but pursue what genuinely fulfills my spirit, joy, connection, and the simple pleasures that set my heart alight. Were I to face death again tomorrow, I know I would answer yes to every question that haunted me on that hospital bed. I would depart this world free of regret, confident that I lived fully as the person I was meant to be. It may sound paradoxical, but I owe this awakening to AIDS and kidney failure. They shattered my complacency and delivered me to a place of radical self-love. In that crucible of suffering, I discovered that true healing begins when we choose compassion for ourselves above all else. If my journey resonates with you, if you too have confronted illness or felt the stirrings of a deeper purpose, please share your own story below. Hit like if you believe that love can transform even the gravest trials into miracles, and subscribe to continue exploring how to cultivate resilience, authenticity, and joy. Together, let us build a community where self-love becomes our greatest medicine and every heart learns to beat in harmony with its divine blueprint. Thank you for listening. May you be inspired to claim your own healing, to speak your truth, and to embrace the limitless potential that lies within your soul. Fairness and love. I recalled my soul family's joyful laughter, pure, unconditional acceptance. Those memories were volatile embers. I felt compelled to tuck them away, keeping them safe and hidden until I could share them without scaring everyone away. I sealed them off, wrapping them in layers of denial as tightly as a diver might wrap precious gear in duct tape to protect it from seawater. On the surface, I carried on, pump air into tanks, inspect valves, monitor depth gauges, fit into life aboard the ship. Deep inside, I hid revelations in a mental trunk marked "Do Not Touch." In the first days after my return, two questions echoed relentlessly hammer blows to my soul. What is my purpose? Why have I been spared? When I returned to my body, certainty of answers felt as bright as the sun. I knew exactly why I must live. Yet now, under harsh fluorescent light and clanging metal, that sense of purpose evaporated like mist. It felt as though I held it in my hand, then tried to grasp water. It slipped through my fingers until I stood holding an aching void. In its place burned something far more tender and insistent, the memory of all-encompassing love. Among fellow near-death survivors, I learned this, yearning to rediscover that love is common. Once you taste unwavering compassion so profound it shatters every condition you ever placed on love, you become a pilgrim driven by hunger to bring that warmth back to daily life. In the months following my return, I stared at friends' faces, wondering if I could mirror even a fraction of acceptance I felt in that celestial realm. At times I believed I should devote all energy to that quest, I'll spend every waking moment in meditation or prayer to recapture infinite light. Yet pursuing that unfiltered love carried dangers. I noticed some survivors became so obsessed with chasing a feeling they could never fully anchor on earth that they withdrew from family, work, and human joys. They spoke of the other side as if it were a drug to feed upon. I worried about falling into that trap. My nights were haunted by dreams of the radiant spirit's promise of peace life could never offer. I'd awaken to clanking machinery, heart pounding with longing, adrift again. I learned, often bitterly, that longing too desperately for light can breed sorrow. Many survivors I met fell into depression because the world they returned to felt stark and empty compared with that realm. They would say, "I just want to go back," and I understood exactly how they felt. There were moments when sedation in my veins blurred body and soul, and I grieved for that purer existence. Still, each time I wrestled with desire to return, I reminded myself I was given a second chance for a reason. The purpose I once clung to hadn't vanished, it had taken shelter behind doubt and fear. So I resolved to let that once glowing certainty re-emerge piece by piece in messy, real life. I vowed to let memory of unconditional love anchor me in small acts, offering genuine kindness to a stranger, apologizing to someone I'd wronged, or simply listening fully when a friend poured out a confession. I experimented with compassion on the job. If a crewmate snapped, I reminded myself anger is a fragile human response, just as I had been fragile in that stormy night. If I sensed bitterness in someone's eyes, I repeated 1 Corinthians. Love is patient and kind. Love keeps no record of wrongs. With practice, I discovered love on earth could be as transformative as love in that realm of stars. Even simple acts, such as steadying a hand on a rock as someone learns to breathe underwater, or a gentle word when a mate trembles before diving, could ripple outward into unexpected grace. Slowly, I realized bringing boundless love back to life didn't require grand gestures. It required authenticity. It required vulnerability. In that form, I understood Jesus' words in John 13:35. "By this everyone will know you are my disciples, if you love one another." Each time I felt myself slip into despair or numbness, I returned to recalling that perfect moment when 3 fragments of light guided me home. I pictured their faces shining like searchlights, offering, "You are not alone. You belong." Even if I could not recapture that cosmic embrace's intensity, I could extend its essence in every conversation, every wave goodbye, every moment. I chose patience over pride. Bit by bit, that forgotten purpose bubbled to life, a steady flame lighting my path through each uncertain dive, each storm-tossed night, each moment of doubt. Acknowledging my shortcomings and honoring my soul family's unconditional affection, I found new courage. The courage to face harsh realities without flinching, the courage to stand by broken places of my heart, and the courage to share that rare gift of love with those still searching in darkness. By weaving compassion into everyday choices, I discovered the infinite love of that cosmic corridor had not abandoned me. Instead, it flowed through me, an ever-renewing river to share drop by drop with a world desperate for light. I would welcome the moment of return when it came, yet I understood living a rich, full life here was my true calling. The otherworldly encounter had a hyper-real quality. I felt more at home in that realm of light than ever beneath my own skin. Returning to my body felt like stepping into a dream. Sounds around me muffled, thoughts slowed by flesh and bones weight. I longed for expansiveness, where every thought radiated outward in brilliant color. I carried a simple theory. When we inhabit mortal forms, we bring only a fraction of our true luminous selves. The rest of our light waits just beyond the veil, ready to be reclaimed when life's struggles release us. Occasionally, in profound moments of prayer or meditation, we glimpse that greater self. But most days, we move tethered to a sliver of our totality. When I first experienced strange sensations, sand ache in my back, tingling numbness in my right arm, I dismissed it as carpal tunnel syndrome from long hours hunched over spreadsheets as Mercy Ridge Hospital's dialysis program manager in Portland. Typing, filing, checking on patients. The daily grind of hospital administration left me convinced I simply needed ergonomic adjustments. But one afternoon, as I waited for a meeting with the Vice President of Clinical Services, a crushing pain flared in my lower back and brought me to my knees. I braced against the conference table and gasped. I'm in incredible pain. Colleagues rushed forward, concern etched on every face. Within minutes, I was in a wheelchair, whisked down antiseptic corridors to radiology. My mind flitted back to that realm of unfettered light, how I felt so much more myself there than in hospital hallways. Could this be another brush with death? I wondered as technicians guided me onto the CT scanner. The humming machine and flickering monitors belonged to the waking world. Yet each beep seemed distant, as if from a half-remembered dream. Fear rose in my chest, not fear of dying again, but fear of forgetting truths witnessed beyond life's boundary. Moments later, I lay on a stretcher in a cramped cubicle as a doctor delivered his verdict, a herniated disc pressing on my spinal cord, compressing nerves that ran down my arm. His eyes confirmed my fear. I would need immediate surgery to preserve sensation in my hand. Despite the piercing pain, a strange calm washed over me. Having glimpsed total consciousness, I no longer feared the operating room. Instead, I felt grateful for one more chance to carry lessons of light into daily life. In the days that followed, every movement reminded me of my fragility and of the immense love I'd felt when my spirit first swelled with infinite light. Each step to the bathroom became an act of thanksgiving. When I sat up to eat a simple meal, I tasted it with new wonder, remembering how in that other realm, every sensation was electric in clarity. The gratitude practice I began after my near-death encounter deepened as I lay in bed, my back rigid from a brace, whispering a silent prayer. Thank you for this life, for this body, for the chance to love and serve. My physical recovery mirrored the inner work of integrating divine love into everyday life. I joined a support group for people recovering from spinal surgery and watched strangers share fears and hopes in the same grateful hush I once felt wrapped in that blanket of light. When I held a trembling hand around a cup of coffee, I reminded myself each drop of warmth was an echo of unconditional love now flowing through me to others. During PT sessions, as I coaxed muscles to stand again, I recalled words I heard in that vast realm. You have a purpose. With each small victory on more day without pain, gripping a doorknob without agony, I felt that purpose building within my bones. Life's detailed emails to reply to, charts to review, staff to counsel on seemed like chores. Now, they felt sacred. When I walked hospital halls and saw a patient staring at an IV drip, I no longer rushed by. I paused to offer a genuine smile or kind word, hoping to reflect the glimmer of boundless love I had tasted. In those quiet acts, I discovered love I craved wasn't confined to a celestial sphere. It lives in every shared glance, every moment we choose compassion over indifference. My spinal fusion surgery ultimately freed me from relentless pain, but its greatest gift reminded me my body, flawed and vulnerable, was a vessel for light. Though I sometimes longed to slip back into that realm of pure wholeness, I understood life's challenge is letting infinite light shine through when we feel bound by gravity and fear. Doing so honors the purpose whispered in that golden corridor. Knowing life's true measure is how we carry light into each moment, every breath, every day. I wheeled myself into the emergency department, bracing against nausea and familiar ache at my spine's base. As I lay on the gurney, I sensed sterile lights overhead and nurses rushing around me. The door slid open, and a young nurse in tears stepped inside. My heart skipped. I had seen this exact scene during my life review, the moment I realized my body was failing. It was deja vu on steroids. Her eyes mirrored my unspoken fear, and suddenly, I knew I was standing at life's threshold again. Moments later, a doctor entered, brow furrowed over scan results on his tablet. "Luke," he began, voice hesitant as if testing truth. "I need to be frank. The masses in your lungs are large and numerous. Imaging shows they've spread to your spine, specifically T2 and T3, and we see lesions in your hips and brain." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. Pain and fear threatened to surge, but I forced myself to remain still, letting the moment play out as I had seen beyond the veil. I watched his lips move, but heard only my certainty echo. "Yes, this is how it must be." He explained standard tests confirmed stage 4 cancer. Morphine and antiemetics were ordered to ease suffering. Soon I would be sent home with instructions to set my affairs in order. In my mind, I replayed the life review where I saw this chapter in vivid detail, images clearer than memory. A consulting specialist murmured, "You have 6 to 8 weeks at best." But I knew better. In that other realm, I was shown I would face cancer but not be defeated. I could almost see my soul family's waiting arms, urging me onward. Gratitude welled unexpectedly. I had begun a gratitude practice long before, sitting each morning with eyes closed, whispering thanks for every breath. Others called it strange, assuming I spoke of suffering. Yet in that moment, I understood why gratitude was essential. It was the only anchor to purpose. I felt it in my bones as surely as I felt the IV needle. Sincere gratitude, the psalmist reminds us, is a sacrifice of praise. Psalm 116-17, the altar on which we lay down fear and anger to see the way forward. That afternoon, I convened a small coalition of physicians, nurses, and holistic care practitioners. As Evergreen Medical Center's Assistant Director of Nephrology Services, I had influence. I asked them to design a treatment plan blending cutting-edge oncology protocols with nutritional counseling, gentle movement therapies, and prayer invoking when appropriate. Isaiah 53:5. By his wounds, we are healed. In that fluorescent room, a new hope took root. Even as pain sharpened with each breath, I felt truth settle in my heart. I would honor that purpose glimpse beyond death, using every lesson love had taught me. In the weeks that followed, chemotherapy and targeted radiation became difficult companions. My hair fell out in clumps, and simple steps left me breathless. Yet gratitude remained my compass. When nausea bent me double, I thanked God for caregivers who held my hands, much like the Good Samaritan, Luke 10:34, who bandaged a stranger's wounds. When exhaustion threatened to swallow me, I counted each beating heart as though every pulse reminded me of Ephesians 3:19, to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge. Miraculously, by summer's first wildflowers peeking through red Oregon soil, scans revealed no active tumors. My cancer receded as though shadows melting before dawn. In rare best-case scenarios fewer than 1 in 20, for stage 4 lung and bone metastases, me survival felt like a gift, fragile but undeniable. I remembered Paul's words in Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I understood now those words were not platitudes for the faint of heart, but truths for anyone who's seen life flicker and feared it would never glow again. Emerging from treatment's haze, I stepped into the world this time with gentleness, replacing arrogance. I spoke in hospital corridors about finding joy in each heartbeat, weaving stories of divine purpose into conversations with patients and families. My spine, once crumpled by disease, held me upright, as if thanking me for remembering the love that lifted me. In every cup of coffee, every bite of toast I could now eat without pain, I heard echoes of that celestial delta of light, a reminder that living fully, no matter how fragile, is life's greatest triumph. Looking ahead, I know the future remains uncertain. My doctors monitor me vigilantly, but fear that once gnawed at me has been replaced by fierce determination. I have chosen, just as I saw in that life review, to let my chapter here testify to love's endurance. Gratitude is my prayer and shield. Each morning, as I watch the sun rise over Mount Hood, I whisper thanks once more, knowing even when twilight falls, the light I've known will never truly fade. Life itself unfolds as the grandest adventure, one I scarcely comprehended before my near-death experience. In that expansive review, I saw that even though only a fraction of our true light accompanies us on Earth, that spark still binds us to an unbroken tapestry of oneness, to the very heartbeat of God. While we walk among the living, we inherit not only existence's blessing, but a profound duty. Reflect that divine light by striving each day to become our best selves. Each choice we make, each gesture of kindness, sets us on unexpected paths, avenues of opportunity revealing how miraculous our shared journey is. Often, when we look back with clarity, we marvel how every trial, every hardship carried hidden gifts. Perhaps we remember a fear we conquered or a loss that taught compassion. Though suffering feels unbearable in the moment, Romans 5:3-4 reminds us, we glory in our sufferings because we know suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. In my review, I saw that my darkest hours, when I felt most broken, were forging resilience I never knew I had. Each time I chose love instead of resentment, I participated in creating something far greater than myself. Even now, life's challenges arrive unexpectedly and relentlessly. Yet, I understand I am not a solitary actor on a desolate stage. I am co-creating with every soul I encounter, a beautiful, living chorus of humanity. As Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians 12:26, if one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. My joys and sorrows ripple outward, mingling with others. In that weaving I discover purpose. Sow seeds of compassion, speak words of comfort, offer a helping hand, small acts that echo through eternity. I will not deny my heart's yearning to return to that radiant expanse of light where every moment felt like coming home. Yet, I also recognize that work here in this fragile garment of flesh holds equal weight and meaning. Jesus declared in Matthew 5:16, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." The adventure of being alive, lifting others. Weaving hope is as sacred as the freedom I glimpsed beyond death. In this temporary life, each step can be an act of worship, a testament to boundless love that first drew us from creation's cradle.